going on, guys? Alex here with TFL Bike. Just me today, no case, but we have some really big news I need to bring you from Suzuki, actually, about the new 2025 DR-Z4S. Now, this is replacing a pretty legendary bike, the DR-Z400, that's been around forever. I think since about 2000, and it really hasn't gotten many changes since then. And yeah, it's one of the most popular dual sports out there. For a while, it was one of the only factory supermotos you could buy. And now we're getting some major updates to it. So we're going to go through all the changes. There's a lot to go through here. And this is all coming out of EICMA, which is this week in Milan. So there are a lot of motorcycle announcements going on. We'll probably bring you some more of those as the week goes on. But today, this is what I saw floating around the internet, and to me, this was the biggest news of the day. Now, we're going to start with the engine because that's probably the area with the most change in this new DR-Z. So yeah, let's run through all the engine changes. It's still a 398cc single-cylinder engine, same bore and same stroke as the outgoing DR-Z400, but basically everything else inside the engine has changed. So big change is it's now fuel injected rather than carbureted. This bike's been carbureted forever, and I think diehard fans of the DR-Z have been waiting for a fuel injected model, and it is finally here. But besides that, we have new titanium intake valves, new exhaust valves, new cam profiles, a new piston, a new crankcase, a new cylinder head. So a ton of different internal changes. A lot of these are to improve the efficiency of the engine. A lot of them are to make it a smoother engine. And most of it is to comply with Euro 5 Plus so that they can keep selling this bike over in Europe. It's got a slipper clutch, and unfortunately, it still has a 5-speed transmission. I think that's one of the disappointments with this bike is the DR-Z has had a 5-speed for a long time, and people have been wanting not only fuel injection, but a more modern 6-speed transmission, and we're not getting that on this new 2025 bike. It's going to remain a 5-speed. Rumor has it going around that even though it's the same number of gears, that the gear ratios have been changed a little bit compared to the outgoing DR-Z400, but Suzuki didn't put exact specs out there, exact figures on what the gear ratios are yet. So we're gonna have to wait and see if that holds up. Hopefully we'll get some more information from Suzuki in the near future, but as far as I can tell, they haven't published that information yet. Those are just the rumors going around online, but no 6-speed. Now, with all these changes, you are gonna get slightly less power than before, 2 horsepower less than in last year's bike, so it now makes 37.5 horsepower according to Suzuki. Max power is also now achieved at a slightly higher RPM than the outgoing DR-Z400, and torque is basically the same as the outgoing bike at about 27.3 pound-feet of torque. So yeah, some pretty big changes to the engine on this bike. Fuel injection is probably the headline here. A little bit of a bummer that we're not getting a 6-speed transmission. A little bit of a bummer that it's making 2 horsepower less than before. But still, I think diehard fans of this bike are really going to appreciate the fuel injection, especially the people like the guy behind me taking this off-road into the mountains, getting out for a full day of riding. People are really going to appreciate that fuel injection. All right, now moving on to the chassis, there's a lot of changes here as well. There's an all-new frame, a new twin spar frame. Similar to the old bike, you're gonna be able to get it in a dual sport or a supermoto variant. So if you get the dual sport, it's gonna come with a set of 21 and 18-inch wheels, 21 inches up front, 18 in the rear, which is a great setup for off-road riding. If you get the supermoto, it's gonna be a true supermoto on matching 17-inch wheels front and back. Suspension, you're looking at Kayaba suspension with adjustable compression and rebound damping, both front and rear. The rear also has a preload adjuster as well. 11.6 inches of rear travel and 11 inches of front travel, at least for the dual sport version. You get a little less suspension travel, obviously, on the supermoto version. 10.9 inches of travel in the rear and 10.2 inches of travel in the front. And then as far as seat heights go, These are pretty tall bikes, 36.2 inches on the DR-Z4S and 35 inches on the DR-Z4SM. And I don't think I've actually said that full name yet. The DR-Z4S is obviously the dual sport model. The DR-Z4SM is the supermoto model. So a little bit of a name change too. It's now just DR-Z4 instead of the 400 like it used to be called. And then obviously just looking at the bike, we have a whole new set of bodywork. Really looks like a more modern dual sport now. That old DR-Z design was almost, past the outdated point, and it started to look a little classic. Just that big boxy bodywork with the big square headlight up front. So they've definitely brought it into the modern era now. Looks a little slimmer now. You have more modern LED lighting all the way around. So they've definitely upped the styling department a lot from the outgoing model. Some huge changes in the tech department too. It's now ride-by-wire, which lets them do a lot of things with ride modes and all the tech around this bike. So it now has the SIRS, Suzuki Intelligent Ride System, which consists of a couple different things: traction control, a drive mode selector, and ABS as well. So the traction control system, you have a couple different modes. You're gonna have 2 selectable TC modes plus a gravel mode for specific use off-road, and then you can fully shut the system off as well. Then there's also your drive mode or your power selectors. You're gonna have 3 modes there, A, B, and C, which I never like when the modes are numbered or lettered because you really have to kind of memorize things. But A mode is gonna be your most powerful. B and C are gonna cut power a little bit, or at least adjust the power curve to make it easier to handle in different scenarios. And then as far as ABS, ABS comes standard on both variants of this DR-Z, but you do have some settings there as well. So on the dual sport, on the DR-Z4S, you're gonna be able to turn ABS completely off at the front and rear, and then on the supermoto, you'll be able to turn ABS off just at the rear. And then looking up between the handlebars, you can see the dashboard, which still looks like kind of a cheap LCD unit, but I think it's been majorly improved from the outgoing DR-Z400, which had a really ancient looking LCD display. So this is still, not a super expensive motorcycle. Hopefully they didn't go crazy with the tech in the dashboard area. It's basically got the things you need and not really anything else. So it's not a tech-centric bike, but now it's got a good amount of tech compared to what we saw on the outgoing bike. And then I want to talk about weight really quick. This bike got a ton of new equipment for 2025, so it's pretty obvious that the weight is going to go up a little bit. 332 pounds for the dual sport model, which is up quite a bit compared to the 317 pounds that we saw in last year's bike. And it gets even a little bit heavier if you go with the supermoto version at 339 pounds. So did get a little bit heavier, did also get a lot more equipment. Price, we don't exactly know yet. Suzuki hasn't announced an official price for this yet. The outgoing model was $7,200 for the dual sport. The supermoto variant was $7,900. So I think we'll see a little bit of a price increase from those figures, considering there's so much more tech and a lot of development has gone into these bikes. We do have an availability date though, which is April 2025 for the DR-Z4S and May 2025 for the DR-Z4SM. So if you want one of these, they should be very gettable by next summer. Anyway, there is the new 2025 Suzuki DR-Z4S and DR-Z4SM. A bike that desperately needed some updates. This is one of those bikes, just like, the KLR, the TW200, that kind of has a cult following in a bike that hasn't been changed for a very, very long time. So they've brought it kind of into the modern era here, made some changes they had to make for Euro 5+, added some new tech, revised the styling a little bit to, make it easier to sell when it's sitting next to a bunch of other modern motorcycles. Couple disappointments, especially with the transmission and the weight, but overall, I think these are some pretty good changes to a super popular bike. And yeah, it's just good to see Suzuki bring the DR-Z into the modern era. Let me know your thoughts on the new DR-Z4S down in the comments below. If you've got one of the old bikes from, maybe 10 years ago, do you think you're going to upgrade to one of these with all these changes? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Check out alltfl.com, and I'll see you in the next video.